Well, good evening, everybody. Good evening, good evening, good evening. It is nighttime, which means that it is a different time for me to be on. But tonight we have a very special conversation. On last week, you got to meet one of my brothers. You got to meet my baby brother. And so tonight we have my oldest brother. Remember, I have four brothers. And tonight we have my oldest brother, Dr. Kevin Wayne Brown. And so we want to talk about his new book, Shadows of Power. But before
Mm.
we get started, we need you to like, share, and tag. We know that I always say like, share. This is a free space, but we know that you have a circle of influence. So like, share, and tag with your circle, your clique, or your crew. And so I am excited. Remember, I told you that last week was our first time with my baby brother. And so this is my oldest brother, and we're going to see how this works. Welcome, Kevin. So good to have you in this space.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Another author from the 800 block of Mooney Avenue, as I always say. I always like to preference that because the good, the bad, and the ugly, it all stems from the 800 block of Mooney Avenue, and it determines who we are, how we are, and why we are. So let's go ahead on and get started because we don't want to be on here long. When you get to be in your 60s, you kind of like want to go to bed early. And I've been up since about 3:30 a.m. this morning. So again, welcome. Tell us a little bit about you. Where are you? What are you doing? And then we're going to get into this book, but we want to make sure that you have shared this on in your space, and we want, of course, all of our friends from Hammond, Louisiana, to come into this space. So we want you to come in, and of course, we know that we are scattered all over. But welcome, and let us know where you are, what are you doing, and then we're gonna get into this book, Shadows of Power. One gender roles, one lost its way, a zero sum reckoning for us all. And I'm excited because I tell you, when I first saw that topic, I thought we were gonna be on opposite ends of the spectrum, but I finally read it and say, okay, I can see where we got some intersections. So I'm okay for this conversation tonight. We won't be adversaries. So
Mm.
go ahead on and introduce yourself. Where are you, and all of that kind of stuff. We're gonna go ahead on and get in this conversation.
So, as I've stated, I thank you for this opportunity to disclose the the things that I come across while doing the research while writing the book Shadows of Power. Of course, I'm a graduate of Grambling, and I've been out of Louisiana since I graduated from Grambling State. 1994. I've been in Wisconsin. I've been in Missouri. I've been in Texas. I'm currently in the greater Chicago area, where I've served as deputy soup of school assistant superintendent, professor of sociology, and I still play the saxophone. So all those other things pay the light bill and the mortgage, but as it relates to the passion, it's music. But I like to do research as well. So um, that's how I stumbled up on this book. But I have been doing a lot of articles on social justice or inequality as it relates to race, as it relates to gender, as it relates to class. But there were some things that were starting to, while following the data, um, kept pointing to boys and men in the era of globalization.
Okay, before we get too much in the data, I want to talk about um, so as I began to read your book and I began to look at my research that I did, um, there were some intersections, and there was some of the same things that we talked about, but from a different perspective, which suggests that they are working together. Now, and especially I saw some things play out even with us growing up when it came to gender roles. So I'm the only girl with four brothers, and as I look back over it, there were some things that our grandmother, right, our maternal grandmother, who was born in 1915, who wanted to be a teacher, right? But she could not be her because her dad said that his girls had to go to work, because he was shaping them to be wives and mothers.
Right.
And the one Uncle Tony, was able to go, per the school. And, there's this story that my, our grandmother told about, she was a she was a valedictorian. I'm like, oh, wow, how many people? She was two. And that was just the funniest thing to me. But she education was her thing, and
Hmm.
she shaped me and wanted me to be the teacher, but I didn't end up being the teacher, right?
Right.
So it just goes to show you that society, culture, especially for those who were born in that era, it was two things. You was going to either be a teacher or you were going to be in the medical field. And so and those are the two things right now that are being pushed against. So, before we get to the book, I want to talk about how is it that you got into education?
Um, well, I never went to school to teach public school. I went to school to teach college. So when I did my first master's at Grambling, I did my student teaching intro to sociology and intro to psychology. So I always knew that I wanted to be a professor. But when I graduated from Grambling, well, Wisconsin and other northern states were doing this massive recruitment of teachers, and I, along with others, Reginald Knighton from Hammond, got caught in that wave in 1994 to move north. The benefits were great. In 1994, it was already over $30,000
Mm-hmm.
leaving college, and just wanted, so to start. That's how I got into education. But before then, I have to say that in Hammond, whenever I was in school, um, Mr. Edward Dillon would call for me to sub. Miss Bernadine Warren would call for me to sub. Dr. Kingsley Garrison would call for me to sub. So that's how I got involved into education. So I started out in Hammond Junior High. Then Mr. Edward Dillon gave me my first long-term substitute job. And then once I graduated, Dr. Kingsley Garrison hired me over at um, Hammond Eastside, but I also was hired at Southern University at the same time. So I ended up taking the job at Southern University teaching psychology.
And you ended up in the public school system, which you liked it. I ended up in the public school system and hated it because it was not
Right.
my natural thing, and so I just remember that, when I said that I wanted to be a journalist, well, they had not seen that before. And it's like, nah, but it goes to show you that when purpose and passion meet, right, then it works. Because I sucked at it because it was not something
Yeah.
that I wanted to do. So
Right.
before we continue, I just want to welcome everybody for coming in. We have Robin Jennings from also Mooney Avenue, from the 700 block of Mooney Avenue. So thank you, Robin, for coming in, and thank you for sharing. Ephraim, our baby brother, is on, and also our sister-in-law Shonda from Houston. Listen, y'all, go ahead and like and share and tag and all of that, because we are going to go ahead on and get in this conversation. So when purpose and passion meet, then you can do and make great strides in it, which you have, which you have done. So now you went on and went through the ranks of becoming, a teacher, then the principal, and then now in administration, right? But again, it all has paid off. Something that you didn't intend to be in, but
Right.
you ended up in, and hey, it's been on to that.
Well, I will have to say that it really it really chose me, because I was still running the street. I was wanted to be Coltrane Davis, and I was Miles Davis, and but yet when so I was living in one of the rental properties on the property that belonged to grandma and grandpa, but
Mhm.
but mom was able to see across the land to the house where I was staying. So she would call me and tell me um, um, that there were kids at my house. Uh,
Uh-huh.
so the
Yeah.
students that I were teaching at Hammond East Side were
Yeah.
leaving school and coming to my yard and hanging out. And I was, 23, 24. I was saying, no, you got to go.
Mhm.
But it continued. So that type of pattern or that connection or that relationship followed me to Wisconsin. It was at Southern University when I taught. It just followed me to this day. It just it's like Velcro when it comes to students and their parents. So
Mhm.
that's why I have to say it's not all me, right?
Yeah.
Because it wasn't my first choice, and again I didn't go to school to deal with public school, but I'm in public school, and as you stated, it has been rewarding. I have
Mhm.
no regrets or anything about it.
Mhm. 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 So, so now you got, you've gone up through the ranks and, done all of those things. And so now we have this book, Shadows of Power. And already they're asking, is it available? Yes, it is available. It seems to be available on all major platforms, right?
Right.
Including Amazon and
Barnes and
Barnes.
Nobles, Goodreads, Bookshop, um, Books a Million.
Mhm.
So it's available.
It's available. So let's talk about it. Let's talk about this book that I got to tell you again. It took me a minute to, because I didn't know what side we was gonna end up being on, but we're on the same we're on the same side. Just came from in a different way. So why this book? Why this book?
Um, I don't know. It's a very difficult question, but it's a common question that people raise, and I say it is a very difficult question for me because I run from things but it continues to. It's like a piece of a puzzle. It continues to put itself in front of me, and
Mm-hmm.
I'll run from it, and it'll continue. Uh, put it in front of me, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So then all of a sudden, I just have to tackle it. So I probably have over 35, 40 articles that I've written,
Mm-hmm.
published, but those articles pretty much came that way, right? So I got to say that I go back to my firstborn, Quentin.
Mm-hmm.
Quentin was diagnosed with ADHD, so therefore it required us taking him to the psychologist for help or for treatment for dealing with ADHD in the family. But
Mm-hmm.
while there, Quentin was born in 1996, so I'm talking about he wasn't diagnosed until he was like in the sixth, seventh grade. But while there, I realized that all the clients were boys,
Mm-hmm.
I'll come back. All the clients were boys. So now I'm in education. I see an overrepresentation of boys in special education, but I also know that it's 80% females, and um, we can get into that part, but
Mm-hmm.
tend to have less patient for boys, and um, boys enter school with a great deal of immaturity also, right? Most boys are not ready for kindergarten because of five. So studying, my degrees, I've taught special education.
Mm-hmm.
um, so those, I realized I had more boys in my classroom, so the puzzle has been coming together, I would have to say, for over 20 years. But
Mm-hmm.
little did I know, right? But then all of a sudden I started to write. So it took me about 18, 19 months to write the book.
So, I was just thinking about you brought up something, that when I was working in the newspaper at Hammond and Daily Star, and I was covering education, and I went to the schools, and all the children were lined up, and I said, "What are they here for? To take their medication."
Right.
Right? To take the medication. I say, medication? What is, I had this big article that I came back and wrote, how detrimental it was and all of this kind of stuff until I had to stint with teaching, right? Until I had to stint with teaching, I'm like, go take your medicine. Did you take your medicine?
Right.
But what I realized that once you got on it, because they were trying to control and keep a sense of
It was treated, they treat boys like, across the country, they treat boys like broken girls. So
say more about that.
so 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 my book takes place, I begin in the 1600s, and I wanted to start in the 1600 because that's the founding, the pilgrims, the Puritans coming in,
Mhm.
but they brought their values, their customs, their cultures, their beliefs.
Yes.
So they said, but we need schools, It was nothing scientific about it. It's just that we know that schools needs to start, right?
Hmm.
And it's five. But we know today that, um, if a girl was born in January of 2000 and a boy was born in August of 2000, she's light years ahead of him. Go upstairs, Stacy, and do these four things.
Hmm.
Stacy is more likely to do those four things. Go upstairs, Daquan, and do these four things. He might come down with one,
Hmm.
but that's not a negative, but yet it's viewed as a negative. It's just that he hasn't arrived yet. So just like someone would not be upset, especially in the north, if you're tulips, or in the south, if your strawberries uh, didn't
Hmm.
come up in December, no one will be upset about it because you know that it is not time.
Not that season.
It's not that season. So that's the same for boys. It's also biological in nature, right? So he's five. Let's start. You're five. But really, a 5-year-old girl and a 5-year-old boy. A 5-year-old girl is really dealing with a 3-year-old boy in mindset. A
Hmm.
20-year-old woman, is to a 20-year-old male, is dealing with a 16 to 17-year-old male. Even Progressive Insurance and State Farm all know this. This is why males' car insurance is high until 25.
Mm.
Well, all the science shows that that's when his frontal lobe has matured, right? So and taking risk and speeding and diminishes significantly. As a result of that, the cost of insurance goes down. So it's a known fact, right? It's a known fact that boys take risk, and but that's not a negative. It has to be cultivated, because it was also taking risks to go to the moon. It was also taking risks to break the sound barrier. It was also taking risks to put those heavy those packs on and go into the building of 9/11 when the buildings were coming down, right?
Mhm.
So that also takes, so it has its place, but it has to be cultivated and trained. But whenever it's not, Well, I'm going to do 100 miles per hour on the motorcycle. I'm
Mm-hmm.
going to shoot the gun that Grandpa told me not to shoot, right? I'm going to do donuts in the middle of the street. These are things that boys are more likely to do and girls are less likely to do. As a result of that, it contributes to incarceration. It contributes to dropping out of school. It contributes to just uh, uh, um, uh, getting involved in the criminal justice system and not holding jobs. It works against you.
So let's go back to the coming of education. You talked about the 1700s and things of that nature, and I was captivated in the book about how you talked about, of course, girls were shaped to um, be in the home, to do all those things, and the boys would have the education, right?
Right,
um and that filtered down to these roles that we have today, right?
right,
Except right, it appears that it has flipped, right? Because
yeah,
girls were not um um educated. And,
right,
and so even we're trying to even get back to that in some of the things and the policies that um that that are coming forth, right?
right.
And so it seems to be just kind of like this, because once it seems that we're getting to have equal footing, there's another say, oh no, well, this gender has too much going on. We got to bring that down because we need to, it seems to be this flip-flop,
Right.
kind of thing. So I'm looking at your title, One Gender Rose, One Lost Its Way, a Zero Sum Reckoning for Us All. Tell us about that.
Well, 1619. So we talk about men and living in the shadows of the devastation, the chaos that due to men. Well, in 1619, we're talking about dominance, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we're talking about masculinity, dominance, power over a people, Africans, to come into a country to for free labor, right, and many other things.
Mm-hmm.
1636, the founding of Harvard. Only men were allowed to go, and explicitly white men, right?
Mm-hmm.
As well as white men who created the constitutions, these rules, but they migrated, or they transferred from Europe. It came with them, these thought patterns, but they were similar to Kris Kringle's or unicorns. These ideas,
Mm-hmm.
women brains are smaller. As a matter of fact, they couldn't go. Grandma was to have graduated with or left school with the 11th grade
Mm-hmm.
degree. It's like two PhDs.
That's right.
But women in the 1700s couldn't go past the 5th grade. So
Mm-hmm.
imagine. So if you're uneducated, I control you. So there's another form of dominance. But education has to be powerful. Why? Because when we look at slavery, if you knew how to read or write,
Mm-hmm.
it, you were not only beaten, but in most cases killed. Why? Education must be powerful. If I will kill you
Yeah.
because you can call out some words. But even the Africans knew the value of reading and writing. They didn't know it. They just said white folks talk to books. They didn't know to say reading, but
Mm-hmm.
they were right on track when they said white folks talk to
And
books.
you can
Right?
think for yourself.
And think for yourself. So we're looking at that. So of course, when only men go to school, Harvard, of course, you're going to invent the Model T. Of course, you're going to invent the
Mm-hmm.
airplane, right? Of course, you're going to, invent these cures for polio and things because only males were allowed to go to school because he was constantly preaching that God, couldn't read it for yourself, that
That's right.
God chose man and man is to lead and be the breadwinner and provide. Well, you have men who have tried to live up to that. And I raised the question, think of the number of women who have been beaten because the food wasn't cooked, right? Think of that because of saying no to sexual favor, whatever, right? But that all stemmed from that, right? Those roots, but he doesn't even know that because his grandpa told him, his great grandpa told him that these are the way that men behave.
And the danger is that they were able to also control the women by saying God said.
Yes.
And it's in the Bible. And so of course today we call that toxic theology, but it is so much, it was passed down. And so to your point,
patriarchy.
So to that point, what I'm hearing you say, if you think that this is your God ordained assignment and you can't live up to it, it presents problems.
Right. So that contributes to the 85% of men who out of every 100 suicides, 85 are males. Out of every 100 people who are in prison or in jail, 93 are men or males, right? Out of every opioid addiction, 75% are men or males, right? That's the most of that is grounded in these beliefs, these perceptions, these traditions that have been handed down that have always been fake, because you can't really touch, or you cannot touch masculinity. Let's go back to the building falling in 9/11. Not only did men put on those heavy fire tanks and stuff, but females did too. So even females can display masculinity. So it's not limited to men, but men also can be feminine, but men have that mixed up. So what does that mean? Does Kevin have feminine traits? Yes, they're absolutely preferred. Not homosexual, but empathy is a feminine trait. Acts of kindness, collaboration, right? Nurturing, collaboration, problem solving, right? Goal setting, tenacity, perseverance, resilience. Those skills women do tremendously better than guys, and that contributes to the tremendous gap that we see in college. 60 to 62% of colleges are made up of females to males, 37 to 40%. So when we talk about the 1700s, and we talk about Elizabeth Montague and Mary Church Terrell and Sarah Hale and Josepha, I get to say in 2025, they were absolutely right. They were like, guess what? We have more creativity. I support that. As the leader of my building, I have something turned into me. I can tell. I don't say this in a sexual way. I ask the guys, I say, did y'all do this by yourself? Did you do this? Or did y'all have any other help from any female, anybody? No, I said, I can tell because you're giving me anything. And it's nothing here. This is bland, and I don't want to generalize, but it's pretty accurate on most times, right? They said, look at us. We're more creative than you guys. Look at how we dress. Look at our home. I get to say that today. We don't even wear ties anymore. And when you dress up, Beyonce yesterday, Jay-Z had on Timberlands, right? We have on gym shoes. Oh, they cost $500. But they're gym shoes, right? So, and I eventually cut the grass in my Jordans or my Dookies, whatever, because men have been bamboozled that those are real leather shoes, and I'm going to wear these to the red carpet. So it's an unraveling of men in multiple ways, even in attire, right? Even in attire, you know, they just pick it up off the floor and they put on their hoodies and they put on their sweats and they put on their $400 shoes and we roll and we put on our cap. But she's dressed to the nine. She's got her hair done. She got her nails done. She got the stiletto, whatever it is. She's gone through a lot opposed to putting on those things. I know guys who will dislike that.
Yeah.
But I stayed the course on it and I went there.
And so I'm thinking about how when I was doing my research that when you went back to oppressed people, right? So when I was doing some research, it talked about even when the religious leaders started the churches and they broke away from the white denominations and the black church, you know, they got their own denominations and all those things, that in order to show themselves as men, because
right,
the white male had said, you're not no man.
Right.
So in order to be a man, when I have my own stuff and the church was the place where we had our own stuff, I'm going to show that I'm a man. So how do I do that? Right. I have to then
live up to those false things, right? Yeah. That haunts them today. So in order to show a man is I'm hurt. But there's no bone sticking out. Get back out in the game, right? You know so men define that as other men, but that come from what sociologists, especially Mike Kimmel, call guyland, where you learn from other guys. But what do you learn? You learn from other older guys. I can go to Bates Lounge. I could go up the street of Mooney Avenue. I can go to the Brown Door. I can go to Oasis. I can hear all those things that men said that told us as we were growing up, even in barbershops, what constitute a male.
Yeah.
They were, I would say 80% of that was wrong, right? Yeah. But they got, and as a result of that, men try to live up to those things that actually don't exist, right? And you continue to fail because they don't exist. It contributes to the loneliness. I'm not going for help. I'm not going for help. So there are way more men that are lonely than females. And when a male loses his spouse, it is not long before he might take his life, right? Because of the loneliness that he endures. But the female, she joins the mission group. She may run for cancer, breast cancer, or walk for cancer, or bake cookies for the Girl Scout. It's something more meaningful, but that is not all, guys. But I am following the research behind it, right? And I don't want to come across as negative, but I have to put out the facts of what males are enduring in the modern era. So we talk about toxic masculinity. Toxic masculinity hurt men, women, the children, society, and stability of society, because it's fake. You're trying to live up to unicorns and Kris Kringle, right? It's fake. It doesn't exist. It doesn't exist. So in order for it to change, there explicitly have to be policies that name men. Why? Because of all the data, what we're saying about what's occurring with men, not women, not a sister, men, right? Substance abuse, 12 times more likely to be a gambler. Then you have Charles Barkley and all them talking about fantasy football. They're going to take that risk, right? So those things need to be dealt with in early school, but school years, not just the cognitive, which is math, science, English, and social studies, but these skills that I'm talking about are known as non-cognitive skills, right? Or in the 70s or 80s, Robin Jennings, we call them soft skills, right? And it goes back to it: problem solving, setting goals, perseverance, collaborating, empathy, acts of kindness. Those things you have to include in your daily life in order to be successful, in order to reach your goals, and in order to be a productive citizen in any community, not just the United States.
So again, we're not talking about bringing one up in order to dominate, right?
No, that's why we're in the situation,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
that's so we talk about Alice Paul, we talk about the women's suffrage of 1848. They were fighting for equal rights. They were fighting for equal rights, and they were not given those rights. 1919, women were given the right to vote, right? So this is four
White
years,
women.
yes, and men.
Yeah.
4 years after Grandma Viola was born in 1915. So in 1919, right? But I want to move up to, of course, you go through Jim Crow, but I want to
Mm,
come up to Richard Nixon in 1972 and Title IX.
mhm,
Title IX. Title IX came about as a result of women fighting for equal rights at the higher level, college, in education, academics, as well as sports. Remember, guys were saying, hey, we're better. God chose us. We play in the big gym on Saturdays. You gonna play in a small gym on Tuesday,
mhm.
right? Because you're a girl. But Title IX leveled that playing field, giving women. Yes, you had Title IV and stuff, but yeah, but one thing about Title IX, before then, pretty much it was men to men. So we were not, social scientists such as myself or those before me, were not able to see the things that boys were dealing with in their frontal lobe,
Mhm.
because it was boys against boys. But when Title IX was passed in 1972, it
Mhm.
took the brakes off girls, women, giving them the opportunity to sit alongside boys in school.
Mhm.
Guess what, Sherry? Guess what? It showed that girls do school better.
Mm.
It shows that girls is more organized. She set goals. She problem solves. She progresses, monitors, right? Those skills that teachers want boys suffer with, but most of that is because he starts school too early. As a
So
matter
what?
of fact, we even date that way. Boys tend to date younger girls. As a matter of fact, we even marry that way. We tend to marry younger women to, and in many cases, to be on par
To be on par.
with
I want
girls.
to bring this here up. I just remember when our cousin Desmond was born. Was coming up and going into school, and he, of course, they wanted to. Desmond was growing up. As a child, he was busy, right? I'll say he was busy, and they wanted to push him toward special ed, right? And our grandmother said, "No, of course." And he probably took the medicine, or whatever. But no, no, you're not going to do that. You're going to have to take the time to channel that energy and to work with him. And so, what I'm asking, and of course, he ended up being, an excellent pianist, and a musician. But my question is, when teachers who are going to most likely be the females get a Desmond in the classroom, right? What are they to do, and are they being um, trained to deal with a Desmond or another young boy who is busy and does have the intellect, but as you say, the organization is not going to be there.
Right. So it's not, so therefore it's not starting with the teacher, right?
Okay.
So that's a deficit mind. So it's like he's not broken. right? He's not broken because after all, piano, trumpet, right? How did he turn? Because he wasn't broken, right? But
Mm-hmm.
he's compared to Stacy, who's gonna sit there, turn in on time. But Stacy gets diagnosed in the 10th grade.
Yes.
But in many cases, it works against her because she was able to sit there and raise her hand and ask to go to the bathroom instead of just walking out. But she's usually diagnosed if there is a situation much later, thus missing out on a great deal of treatment or counseling or strategies or technique from outside help. But there's a great deal of teacher biases, right? So when we have 80% of the teaching force that are female,
Mm-hmm.
um, most boys do not see well over 75%, 80% of boys do not see their first male teacher until junior high,
Mm-hmm.
right? And uh, yeah, yeah. So I will say that the male teacher, despite his race, is just as important as black teachers, if not more important,
Mm-hmm.
because you don't have 85% of girls, despite race, killing themselves. You don't have 93%, right? They are still going to college. But but the research shows that when there are more male teachers, despite his race, he's less likely. The boy is less likely to act out. The teacher is more likely to absorb unwanted behaviors that the boy displays, right?
Mm-hmm.
And understand that that's boy behavior, running through the door and slapping it. But to Miss Baranowski, she's checking you though. She might say, "Oh, well, he's did that 10 times. I think something is wrong with him," but really, it's nothing wrong with him. So when we look at public schools and boys, 20% of boys in school are in special ed. That's one
Mm-hmm.
out of every 5 boys, right? So when we look at all 50 states, that's millions of boys that are in special education. That well over majority should not be in there, but due to his immaturity, his late frontal lobe development, because he started at 5 and he
Mm-hmm.
was born in August, school starts in August.
Mm-hmm.
His chance of knowing his ABs and that compared to the girl,
Unless you had somebody at home, a grandma, or somebody who, is pushing it and pushing it and pushing it. And, as we say, I just remember, you walked into our grandmother's house and all the walls was covered in ABCs and one, two, threes and all of these things. My friend Donna Otis, who is actually in Chicago, she says that my 4-year-old grandson, they are claiming behavioral issues, but I am telling my daughter to challenge it, especially since he is in
rural
rural
Arkansas,
Arkansas. Yeah,
and he's 4.
yeah.
Um, um, so when we look at teachers, no disrespect, but I went to school for English. I went to school for social studies. I went to school for science, physical education. They may see some things that may appear different, but they are not certified to say that something is wrong with um, the child. That is illegal to put a label on a child, even if they're 17, 18, and you are not a certified faculty or
Mm,
staff, not even Kevin Brown, with my background, because I'm not a psychiatrist
mhm,
to make that determination. But 4 years old, it's not uncommon. In my book, I talk about preschool kids who are younger than 4. So, and they are black boys. So, black boys are like in preschool are like 5 times more likely to be suspended and expelled. So,
mhm.
what is it that a 3-year-old and a 4-year-old boy is doing? Right? I'm probably active and busy, but that's that. There are other things that we must take into consideration before we just automatically say that there might be ADHD or learning disability or ODD, oppositional defiant disorder. It might be just an impatient teacher. It might
Mhm.
be a teacher filled with implicit biases. It might be a teacher that doesn't want to be in their job, in their position. So to that, I'm still on that question. So please be the strong advocates
Mhm.
for your children, especially your boys of color.
Mhm. 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 So, before we, we wrap up, as we prepare to, to wrap up.
Before we wrap up, can I make one statement? I
Sure.
want to make this statement. The question is, how many times would you put 50 cents in a soda machine and get no return? So when we talk about patriarchy or and still living in that tradition, so are public schools contributing to the teacher shortage because we're still looking for just females. But
Mhm.
we know that she's going to school. I talked about Title IX, 1972. Since 2000, she has been graduating from college at 1.5 million to 2 million more a year than men. So now when we're watching the NFL, the commentators are females. When we watching the meteorologists that used to be during Al Roker years used to be all men, these science jobs are all women.
That's
Not
right.
only that, when the head person is absent, meteorologist absent, the substitute is also a female. You know why? Because those jobs require going to college. When Trump was shot in the ear, the CIA agent has always been a man, but this time it was a female that he fired, right? When
Mhm.
the barge hit the bridge in Baltimore, it was the NTSB person was a female, used to be a man. When the door fell off the airplane in flight 2 years ago, the NTSB person used to be a man, it's a female. Police chiefs, fire captains, militaries, and finally, let's look at the airplane. Let's
Mhm.
look at fighter pilots. In order to be a fighter pilot, men, in order to fly airplanes, you got to have a college degree. Guess
Mhm.
who's not going to college? And guess who is? So as a result of that, the military is having to or have adjusted the cockpit to be more accommodating for the female body. Why? Because there are more female fighter pilots,
Yeah.
right? Because she's going through the military and things. Men have remained like cardboard, unflexible, falling for that. I'm going to bring back coal mines. We're not building high rises and interstates and railroad tracks and sitting on top of high rises, eating our sandwich without a harness on.
So, well,
Those
let me
those
just
things,
stop this
those
here.
things, those things that we saw that men fell for that created what we call masculinity, right? But those things do not exist, and he's still waiting for it. But there are millions of jobs, blue collar working jobs, but it's not you're going to stand right here and you're going to put the screws on, you're going to put the hood on. That's no, it is now you can still wear the helmet and the hard boots, but you're using your fingers to operate the robot to do those things. So
Yeah.
those your skills have to shift. There are millions of jobs in factories that pay $50,000 to $100,000, not because I said it. You can go right to it and Google it. That are unfilled right now because men who are not going, female who are going, but those jobs that men are talking about that they want in factories exist, but they don't look the way they
They
did
don't look
in
good.
the
Yeah.
1950s.
So, this speaks to, there's this thing, well, you don't have to go to college,
Yes,
or, college is not, don't send everybody to college
yes,
because, people, where are the plumbers? Where are
right,
the electricians? Well, they're even coming. Yeah, there's some manual things that you have
yes.
to do,
But
right?
you got to have some post-secondary training.
Even if you don't know,
If
you
you're
got
a
to
barber,
know how to use your phone. You got to know how you got to have some type of um other skill then, and then let's not talk about the
beyond 12th grade. It could be for 9 weeks. It could
yes,
be for 6 months. It could
yes,
be for 9 months for
yes,
barber school, cosmetology. But you have to have some type of post secondary training.
Okay, so that's what we're talking about, post-secondary training as opposed to just 4-year colleges, right?
That's right.
Okay. I need to make, and I also wanted to say this, and I want to just kind of like reiterate this, is that we're not talking about, because we went through this litany of, now you're going to see the women, you're seeing the women in the cockpit, you're seeing the women,
Delta Airlines,
in these
Southwest.
positions.
Yeah.
It is not a thing about you shouldn't be there.
No.
It is a thing. What I'm hearing is that
it should be applauded.
It should be applauded, and it's not like a thing that, where you should be in this place and the male should be in this place.
And those are those gender roles that were passed down, yes. Right? That you got to wash dishes.
Yes.
You got to cut the grass. You got to go get the oil change, right? Yeah. And those are just minor things, but for the sake of clarity. But it's equitable. It's working together. It's collaborating. It's acts of kindness. It's empathy, right? It's taking up the slack. So to be the truth, there are 3 P's that in redefining masculinity. But these things have always existed. Men should be providers. That's and when I say maturity, right? Masculinity. I want to differentiate between immature masculinity and mature masculinity. Immature masculinity, I'm not going to wash dishes. You better have my food cooked. You better submit when I say it. I'm going to kick your ass and all these things. That's the immature. I'm not going to take the kids to the baseball game. That's immature masculinity. And mature is, of course, the opposite of that. But while explaining it, I did cut my thought. I can't remember what I was about to say, but I lost that. But it'll come back. But toxic masculinity. When we look at the word toxic alone, it means poisonous, venomous, deadly. Right now, we add that to masculinity. I am saying, and that's a turnout. So we should use the word mature masculinity. I am saying before we conclude that we already know that males are less likely to go for help. They're more likely to be lonely and eventually hurt themselves, right? If not hurt the whole family, right? But he's going to work. He looks normal, nothing wrong. But then all of a sudden you hear that these things have occurred, right? Men are in crisis in the labor market. 7 to 10 million fewer men are working today compared to 1969 when Lyndon B. Johnson was president. Men and boys are at home and they're not engaged in society, in the basement, in their room, looking at porn, masturbating, vaping, doing all kinds of things that mom and dad want out. That women who are looking for a spouse, men have to adopt those traits or behaviors that are effective, like advocating for yourself, being accountable, owning your failures, and being a part of and contributing to society, and not being absent for your children. Because when men are absent, it increases the likelihood that children will live in poverty. And when kids live in poverty, it increases the likelihood that they will experience the stresses associated with poverty, such as child abuse, physical abuse, rape.
So it sounds like it's just a never ending.
So therefore, to ignore men, you're ignoring 50% of the United States and the globe. Now, I know I have been talking about men starting because girls outpace them. I don't want to overlook this. This phenomenon, Sherry, is not limited to the United States.
Okay.
Girls outpace boys on the globe. Right? So it has to be biological in nature. right?
Mm,
So that's in countries where women can't drive.
mhm.
These Arab countries that we talk about, they still outpace men, right? So there must be something beyond the social environmental factors, right? It is. It's known as the frontal lobe, where ADHD lies, autism lies, bipolar, schizophrenia, those things that men suffer with more than women.
So, we can go on and on and on and on, but we want to get people to get this book, right? Because the conversation is good, but we got an ulterior motive. We want people to buy this book. And my
Well,
friend
yeah, yeah.
is asking, is the book available? So I want you to tell her that. And then also, you have something coming up in Hammond that we want to make sure that people know about.
Right, right. So I would do more of a workshop or a presentation, a PowerPoint thing, to show this data, to support my position, my stance, or not just me, but the field of sociology and psychology as it relates to men and where men are, and the wonderful advancements that women have made. The liberation of Title IX. When we look at the movie Help, The Help, women were getting married, were grooming themselves to get married. Women don't have to do that anymore, right? Because 40% of the breadwinners in the home today are females. 40%, right? A significant change. This book can be purchased at Barnes and Nobles, Amazon, Bookshop. Just Google it, and you and my name, you'll be able to get it. I will be in Hammond on December 13th. I'll be in Madison, Wisconsin on December 5th. I'm just getting back yesterday from Las Vegas. Um, um, and I have a great deal of virtual. I had a virtual interview yesterday from India. That's my
Mhm.
third interview from India. And it's amazing that I'm trending in India like
Mm.
crazy, considering it's talking about gender roles. But I think I kind of get why. But it's the much younger Gen Z students who reaching out to me about the book and wanting to interview me. So
Well,
my role and my purpose is to expose. Martin Luther King did not solve problems, or Malcolm X. He exposed them for others with power to bring about change. I'm exposing them. So if you're in school, or you have children, or your congressperson or your mayor, your alderman, these are conversations that we need to have, about men in jail, men loneliness, overdosing on opioid and fentanyl, um, um, suicide, um, not going to school, not in the job market. These things negatively impact the globe, the family, the
mm,
community, the sustainability of the community as we know it. So in America, with the vast amount of resources that we have, we can help men and women at the same time. The things that we did for women along the way, about get your college degree, have your own
mm,
apartment, go to
mm.
school, don't rely on men, that was positive and it worked. And it's very,
It's
very
real.
important. It's very, very important. Now we have to do the same for men. Who's less likely to ask for direction. Just think about the 1980s when we had the map, and we're lost, and he's refusing, but she's over there saying, "Stop, Bobby, stop, Bobby, we're lost." And he's saying, "No, Shirley, I'm going to keep going. I'm going to keep going until Bobby has to stop." And thank God for GPS. So we're living in the shadows of those things that men have done, but we have to forgive men for slavery and all those horrible things against women, for the sake of life.
Wow. This listen, I need y'all to go and get this book. We can go on and on and on about it. Kevin, I'm proud of you and the work that you have done, and so excited that you'll be coming to Hammond on December the 13th at the Hammond Branch Library. What time is that?
It's at 12 o'clock, and it may also. I got another email today. I might be at Hammond. I will be in Hammond from 12 to 1, but they're trying to see if I can also hit Ponchatoula and or A Meat, right?
Okay.
So because I fly in Friday night, Saturday, then I'm out Sunday morning by like 9 a.m.
Wow.
So about good 24, 36 hours.
Well, just do it up and and make it work. And this is certainly some work that needed to be done. And I'm glad that
Yeah, it's
it
getting
is
a
working.
lot of
And that,
a lot of recognition, a lot of conversation. A lot of people sending pictures when they buy their book, and they send it to me. Um, yeah,
so make sure that you get the book, and again, on all of the platforms where you can purchase books. And please go ahead on and support. And if you have a space that you can bring Dr. Kevin Brown in to talk about this, to do this work, then by all means. And so, Kevin, when you get an opportunity, just come in the comment section and you can interact with people and put your contact information on there. So listen, I got two more brothers. We'll see how that's going to work. We're going to see how that is going to work. Last week Shonda told me that, hey, her husband, our brother Derek Cook. So we'll see what we can do with that. Robin Jennings said hello. Uh,
hello, Robin. Hello, Margaret Brown. I'm sure. Hello, Derek.
she's not on here yet.
I
She's not
cannot
on here.
believe.
Auntie Gladys, Sister Gladys, not on here. I've shared it
Yeah.
to their page, but hey, it's all good. Listen, y'all be good, and thank you for joining us with Meet the Browns.
Thank you so much for the
Until the
opportunity.
next time, have a good night. Bye bye. Bye bye.